And here we are. We are gathered here on this fine Sunday. We are live. Thank you very much for joining me. It is, of course, your host. I have my sweater on, and these are my new silk sheets. These were advertised as gold, and they seem to be some sort of a mustard instead. But they are shiny and sexy and smell new. So God bless America. The Grateful Immigrant, as we sit down to read House of Leaves by by Mark Z.Danielewski. God bless him. He's actually got a really impressive Instagram. I have to say, I looked it up last week because I tagged him in a story. You can, of course, look up my Instagram and tag me in anything that you so choose. Happy Sunday. Let's get to it. We're on page 55, straight in. As tape and film reveal, in the month following the expansion of the walls bracketing the bookshelves, Billy Reston made several trips to the house, where despite all efforts to the contrary, he continued to confirm the confounding impossibility of an interior dimension greater than an exterior one. Ned Davison skillfully captures Reston's mental frustration by focusing on the physical impediments of his friend must face within the house, not designed with the disabled in mind. Since the area in question is in the master bedroom, Reston must make his way upstairs each time he wishes to inspect the area. On the first visit, Tom volunteers to try and carry him. That won't be necessary. Reston grunts, effortlessly swinging out of his chair and dragging himself up to the second story using only his arms. You got a pair of guns there, don't you, partner? The engineer is only slightly winded. Too bad you forgot the chair, Tom adds dryly. Reston looks up in disbelief, a little surprised, maybe even a little bit shocked, and then burst out laughing. Well, fuck you. In the end, Ned Davison is the only one who hauls up the wheelchair. Still, no matter how many times Reston wheels from the children's bedroom to the master bedroom, or how carefully he examines the strange closet space, the bookshelves, or the various tools, Tom and Will have been measuring the house with. He can provide no reasonable explanation for what he keeps referring to as a goddamn spattle rape. By June, as the date on the H8 tape indicates, the problem still remains unsolved. Tom, however, realizes he cannot afford to stay any longer and asks Reston to give him a lift to Charlestonville, where he can catch a ride up to the duels. Wow, we're a popular bunch today. It is bright summer morning when we watch Tom emerge from the house. He gives Karen a quick kiss goodbye and then kneels down to present Chad and Daisy with a set of neon yellow gun darts. Remember, kids, he tells me sternly, don't shoot each other. Aim at the fragile, expensive stuff. Now Davison gives his brother a lasting hug. I'll miss you, man. You got a phone, Tom grins. It even rings. Ned Davison adds, without missing a beat, while there's no question the tone of the exchange is codlar, Jocular, Joe Collar, and perhaps even slightly combative. What matters most here is unspoken. The way Tom's cheeks burn with a sudden flush of color, or the way Ned Davison quickly tries to wipe something from his eyes. Certainly, the long, lingering shot of Tom as he tosses his duffel bag in the back of Reston's van, waving the camera goodbye, reveals to us just how much affection Ned Davison feels for his brother. Isn't that nice? Strangely enough, following Tom's departure, communication between Ned Davison and Karen begin to radically deteriorate. An unusual, quite quiet descends on the house. Karen refuses to speak about the anomaly. She brews coffee, calls her mother in New York, brews more coffee, and keeps track of real estate market in the classifieds. Frustrated by the unwillingness to discuss the implications of their strange living quarters, the Davison retreats to the downstairs study, reviewing photographs, tapes, even as a few stills reveal, compiling a list of possible experts, government agencies, newsletter, periodicals, and television shows they might want to approach. At each at least, I beg your pardon, at least both he and Karen agree on one thing. They want the children to stay out of the house. Unfortunately, since neither Chad or Daisy has had a real opportunity to make any new friends in Virginia, they keep to themselves, romping around the backyard, shouting, screaming, stinging the neighborhood for increasingly longer spats of time. Neither Karen nor the Davison seems to notice. The alienation of their children finally becomes apparent to both them one evening in the middle of July. Karen is upstairs, sitting on the bed, playing with a deck of tarot cards. Ned Davison is downstairs in his study, examining several slides. Returned to the lab, reviewing several slide cards. Ned Davison and wait, this is a fucking weird line. Returned from the lab. Hey, there we go. News of Oliver North's annual conviction plays on the TV. In the background, we can hear Chad and Daisy squealing about something, their voices pealing through the house, the strained music of their play threatening at any instant to turn into a brawl. With superb cross-cutting, the Davison depicts how both he and Karen expect to react to the next moment. Karen has drawn another card from the deck, and instead of adding it to the cross slowly forming before her, her crossed legs, the occult image hangs unseen in the air, frozen between her two fingers. Karen's eyes already diverted, concentrating on a new sound, almost out of reach, but reaching her just the same. Now, Davison is much closer. His children's cries immediately tell him that they are way out of bounds. Karen has only just started ahead. Excuse me. Karen has only just started to head downstairs, calling out for Chad and Daisy, her agitation and panic increasing with every step. When the Davison bolts out of the study and races for the living room, the terrifying implication of their children's shouts is now impossible to miss. No room in the house exceeds a length of 25 feet, let alone 50 feet, let alone 56 feet, let alone a half a foot. And yet Chad and Daisy's voices are echoing, each calling, responding with an entirely separate answer. In the living room, the Davison discovers an echo emanating from a dark, doorless hallway, which has appeared out of nowhere in the west wall. Without hesitating, the Davison plunges in after them. Unfortunately, the living room high-end camera follows him, nor, for that matter, can Karen. She freezes on the threshold, unable to push herself into the darkness towards the faint flicker of light within. Fortunately, she does not have to wait too long. And Davison soon reappears with Chad and Daisy in each arm, both of them still clutching a homemade candle, their faces lit like spirits on a winter eve. This is the first sight of Karen's chronic disability. Up until now, there has never been even the slightest indication that she suffers from crippling claustrophobia. By the time the Davison and the two children are safe and sound in the living room, Karen is drenched in sweat. She hugs and holds them as if they had just narrowly avoided some terrible fate. Even though neither Chad nor Daisy seems particularly disturbed by their little adventure. In fact, they want to go back. Perhaps Because of Karen's evident distress, Ned Davison agrees to at least temporarily make this new addition to their house off limits. For the rest of the night, Karen keeps a tight grip on the Davison. Even when they finally slip into bed, she is still holding his hand. Navy, promise me you won't go down there again. Let's see if it's even there in the morning. It will be. She lays her head down flat on his chest and begins to cry. I love you so much. Please promise me, please. Whether it is the lasting flush of terror still in Karen's cheeks, or her absolute need for him, so markedly different from her frequent aloof posture, Ned Davison cradles her in his arms like a child and promises. Since the release of the Ned Davison record, Virginia Poa has written extensively about Karen Green's adolescent years. Poa's thin volume entitled Wishing Well, Cambridge, Massachusetts, Harvard University Press, 1996, represents one of the few works which, while based on the Davison experience, still manages to stand on its own merits outside of the film, along with an exceptional background in everything ranging from Kate Chopin, Sylvia Plath, Toni Morrison, autobiography of a schizophrenic girl, the true story of Renee Francis Block's Whitsley's Bat Book, to Mary Piper's revising Ophelia, and more importantly, Carol Gillian's landmark work In a Different Voice, Psychological Theory and Women's Development. POSAH, POSAH, has spent hundreds of hours researching the early life of Karen Green, analyzing the cultural forces shaping her personality, ultimately uncovering the remarkable difference between the child she once was and the woman she eventually became. In her introduction, Poa provides a brief overview. When Detour told the teenager Sophia Vollard, "You will die at 15," he could have been speaking to Karen Green, who at 15 did die. To behold Karen as a child is nearly as ghostly an experience as the house itself. Old family films capture her athletic zeal, her unguarded smile, the tomboy spirit which she sends her racing through the muddy flats of the recently drained pond. She's awkward, a little clumsy, but rarely self-conscious, even when covered in mud. Former teachers claim she frequently expressed a desire to be the president, a nuclear physicist, a surgeon, even a professional hockey player. All her choices reflected unattenuated self-confidence, a remarkably healthy sign for a 13-year-old girl. Although with superb classwork, she excelled in extracurricular activities. She loved planning surprises parties, working on school productions, and even on an occasional taking on a schoolyard bully with a bout of fists. Karen Green was exuberant, feisty, charming, independent, spontaneous, sweet, and most of all, fearless. By the time she turned 15, all of that was gone. She hardly spoke in class. She refused to function in any sort of school event. And rather than discuss her feelings, she deferred the world with a hard and perfectly practiced smile. Apparently, if her sister is to be believed, Karen spent every night of her 15-year composing that smile in front of a blue plastic handled mirror. Tragically, her creation provided flawless, and though through her near xenophobia, she should have alarmed any adept teacher or guidance counselor. It was invariably rewarded with a PYR ITIC prize of high school popularity. Though Portia goes on to discuss the cultural aspects and consequences of beauty, these details in particular are most disturbing, especially in light of the fact that little of their history appears in the film. Considering the substantial coverage present in the Ned Davison record, it is unsettling to discover such a glaring omission. In spite of the enormous quantity, mother trucker, quantity of home footage obviously available, for some reason, calamities of the past still do not appear. Clearly, Karen's personal life, to say nothing of his own life, caused Davison too much anxiety to portray either one particular well on his film, rather than delve into the pathology of Karen's claustrophobia. Davison chose instead to focus strictly on the house. Of course, by the following morning, Karen has already molded her desperation into a familiar pose of indifference. She does not seem to care when they discover the hallway has not vanished. She keeps her arms folded, not longer clinging to Ned Davison's hand or stroking her children. Whew. Heavy duty booty. Heavy duty booty. Oh my lord. Oh my lord. Oh my lord. Okay. While the reports seem fairly, where the hell is going on here? Children. She removed herself from the family's company by saying very little, while at the same time maintaining a semblance of participation with a smile. Virginia Poe is right. Karen's smile is tragic because, in spite of its meaning, it succeeds in remaining so utterly beautiful. The 5.5-minute hallway. The Davison Records differs slightly from the bootleg copy which appeared in 1990. For one thing, in addition to the continuous circumambulating shot, a wider selection of shots has made the coverage of the sequence much worse, though thorough and fluid. For another, the hallway has shrunk. This was impossible to see in the VHS copy because there was no point of comparison. Now, however, it is perfectly clear that the hallway, which was well over 60 feet deep when the children entered it, is now a little less than 10 feet. Context also significantly alters. The 5.5-minute hallway, a greater sense of the Davison and their friends and how they all interact with the house adds a greater amount of depth to the quietly evolving enigma. Their personalities almost crowd the place, and suddenly, too, as an abrupt jump cut re-delivers Tom from Massachusetts and Billy Reston from Charlestonville, the UVA professor once again wheeling around the periphery of the angle, unable to take his eyes off the strange dark corridor. Unlike the Twilight Zone, however, or some other like cousin, where understanding comes neat and fast, i.e., this is clearly a door to another dimension, or this is a passage to another world with dimensions. The hallway offers no answers. The monolith in 2001 seems the most appropriate cinematic analog. Incontrovertibly, there, but virtually involate to interruption. Similarly, the hallway also remains meaningless, though it is most assuredly not without effect, as Ned Davison threatens to re-enter it from a closer inspection. Karen reiterates her previous plea and injunction with a sharp and abrupt rise in pitch. The ensuing tension is more than temporary. Davison has always been an adventurer, willing to risk his personal safety in the name of achievement. Karen, on the other hand, remains the standard bearer of responsibility and is categorically against risk, especially those which might endanger her family or her happiness. Tom also shies from danger, preferring to turn over a problem to someone else, ideally a police officer, fireman, or another state paid official. Without sound or movement, but by presence alone, the hallway creates a serious rift in the Davison household. Bazin Nadeau suggests that the hallway excludes a conflict creating force. It exudes a conflict, it radiates, it immerses, it puts out there, it gives forth. Exudes a conflict creating force. It's those oily walls radiating badness which maneuver Karen and Will into that nonsensical fight. Nadeau's argument reveals a rather tedious mind. She feels a need to invert some non-existent dark force to account for ill will instead of recognizing the dangerous influence an unknown naturally has on everyone. The unknown naturally has on everyone. A couple of weeks pass. Karen privately puzzles over the experience but says very little. The only indication that the hallway has in some way intruded on her thoughts is her newfound interest in Fyung Shi. In the film, we can make out a number of books lying around the house, including the elements of Feng Shi by Kok Mai Ho and Joan O'Byrne. Feng Shi Handbook, the practical guide to Chinese geometry and environmental harmony by Derek Walters. Interior Design and Feng Shi by Sarah and I Book Changes, a third edition, translated. There is a particular tender moment as Chad sits with his mother in the kitchen. She is busily determining the qua number, the accumulation based on the year of birth from everyone in the family, while she carefully making a peanut butter and honey sandwich. Mommy, Chad quietly asked after a while, how do I get to become president when I grow up? Karen looks up from her notebook quite unexpectedly, and with the simplest question, her son has managed to move her. You study hard at school and keep doing what you're doing. Then you can be whatever you want. Chad smiles. When I'm president, I can make you vice president. Karen's eyes shine with affection. Putting aside her feng shui studies, she reaches over and gives Chad a big kiss on the forehead. How about Secretary of Defense? During all this, Tom earns his keep by installing a door too close off of the hallway. First, he mounts a wood frame using some of the tools he brought from Lowell, and a few more he rented from the local hardware store. Then he hangs a single door with 24 gauge hot dipped galvanized steel skins and an acoustical performance rating coded STC 28. Last but not least, he puts in 4 Celgard deadbolts and color codes the 4 separate keys: red, yellow, green, and blue. For a while, Daisy keeps him company, though it remains hard to determine whether she is more transfixed by Tom or the hallway. At one point, she walks up to the threshold and lets out a little yelp, but the cry just flattens and dies in the narrow corridor. Tom seems noticeably relieved when he finally shuts the door and turns over the 4 locks. Unfortunately, as he twists the last key, the accompanying sound contains a familiar ring. He grips the red key and tries it again. As the deadbolt glances and strikes the plate, the resulting click creates an unexpected and very unwelcome echo. Slowly, Tom unlocks the door and peers inside. Somehow, and for whatever reason, the thing has grown again. Intermittently, Ned Davison opens the door himself and stares down the hallway, sometimes using a flashlight, sometimes just studying the darkness itself. What do you do with that? Ned Davison asks his brother one evening. Move, Tom replies. Sadly, even with the unnatural darkness now locked behind a steel door, Karen and Ned Davison still continue to say very little to each other. Their own feelings seemingly as impossible for them to address as the meaning of the hallway itself. Oh my lord. Chad accompanies his mother down mother to town as she searches for various feng shui objects guaranteed to change the energy of the home, while Daisy follows her father around the house as he paces from room to room, talking vehemently on the phone with Reston, trying to come up with a feasible and acceptable way to investigate the phenomenon lurking in his living room, until finally, in the middle of this, he lifts his daughter onto his shoulders. Unfortunately, as soon as Karen returns, Ned Davison sets Daisy back down on the floor and retreats to his study to continue his discussion alone. With domestic tension proving a little too much to stomach, Tom escapes to the garage where he works for a while on a dollhouse. He has, wait a second, with the domestic tensions proving a little too much to stomach, Tom escapes to the garage where he works for a while on a dollhouse he has started to build for Daisy, until eventually he takes the break, drifting out to the backyard to get high and hot in the sun, poignantly walking around the patch of lawn the hallway should, for all intents purposes, occupy. Before long, both Chad and Daisy are sliding up to the gate, Great Bear snoring under the tree, and even though they start to tie his shoelaces together, tickle his nostrils with long blades of grass, or use a mirror to focus the sun on his nose, Tom remains unremarkably patient. He almost seems to enjoy their mischief, growling, yawning, playing along, putting both of them in the headlock, Chad and Daisy laughing hysterically, until finally all three are exhausted and snoozing into the dust. Right, well, we'll call it good there on page 62. Right, beautiful. My hips and thighs are very much open now, and my mind is clear with words, and my voice is now warmed up and ready to rock and roll. Wishing you a wonderful start to a bold, blessed, and beautiful week. Keep rocking what you got. Keep doing what you do. Thank you for tuning in for this complete boyfriend experience on this bold, blessed, and beautiful Sunday. Wouldn't you like to be on these silk sheets with me now, huh? These mustard, allegedly gold, sold as gold, but looks more like mustard silk sheets. To be continued. Yeehaw! Get on up now. Go on, you good thing, you. Hoopah! Let's go. Oh wait, I still gotta press the thingy. Gotta do 2 hits, 2 buttons.